when you talk about TKO, you're talking about IMG. A lot of athletes really are focused on the numbers, not just what they did on the field, but what are they going to do at the combine? Because if you run a 4.9 and you're 330 pounds, like this one offensive lineman Pete's going to talk about, well, that's pretty impressive. And if you're a safety and you're running 4.25 or whatever, also impressive. Watch the technique of this guy, Pete, because he looks like he has really been trained to go fast, and yet he is beyond just a fast guy running a 40-yard dash. But let's take a look.
Look at the sheer girth. Oh, the guy's 6'8" or 9. That's moving. And look at his build. I mean, what are we looking at?
One hand.
I'll tell you what, it's a combination of unreal talent and a little bit of stickum on those daggone things, but it's all good.
Oh, yeah.
My guess is his hand is big enough that ball is like a ball.
Which Pete and I have always said is important, and obviously they work on this. But, I mean, you catch it with your hands. You don't let the ball come in and hit you in your elbow socket, basically, right there, and cradle it like that. You put it there after you've caught it with your hands. That kid was impressive, Pete.
Yep.
Big man, too.
So here's the takeaway that I've got for us, John, because I love the combine. I watch it. Matter of fact, last year, you know how many people watched the combine last year? 5 million. Do you think the NBA, who gets 1.5 million, would like to see that 5 million number? I think that they would. This is just for the combine, which is a pretty meaningless thing, right? I mean, it's great to know the 40 times and the verticals and the broad jumps and the bench press, all of that stuff that they do. But the reality is, put on the film and let's see what it looks like. I mean, there is talent there, unbelievable strength, of athleticism, all of those things. There's one guy who this year did stand out for me, John. I went back and I looked at the top 10 for bench press and 40 times and all the rest of it. Most of those guys who are in the top 10 at the combine have no NFL career or experience at all, because when they went there, they did what they did and they're talented, but you put them on a football field with a helmet and everything else, they're a different person. And that's the thing you've got to find out is, do we have the right guy who also has these right numbers? There's a kid this year from South Carolina, Nick Emworri, who's a safety. He's 6'3.5", 225 pounds. He ran a 4.38 40, a 43-inch vertical, 11.6-inch broad jump. I mean, there's not a number he didn't reach and blow away. And they have a system, John, where they give you a number of what your number looks like. This kid had a perfect 10. Nobody's ever had a perfect 10. This kid had a perfect 10. Now, he actually can play football. That's the good thing here, because sure, it helped his draft status a little bit. He's an All-American first team, All SEC first team. He was an All-Freshman All-American. He was also an All SEC All-American back in 2022. So this is a guy who actually has both, which you don't see very often. A guy who's the best safety coming out, and he's got all these numbers that he's got behind him. I mean, it really is special to see that. And like I said, I went through it. The guys who put up 45 reps on the bench, you and I don't know who they are. There's a lot of other guys out there, John, who are significantly down from that, but they get out there on the football field. They're football players. They're not the airport players like you and I talk about. So it is fun to watch I don't know what the combine numbers look like this year because it was too early and they hadn't put them out yet. But my guess would be we'd be somewhere close to that 5 million mark again. I think weather plays a part around the country too, if people are going to sit in their houses and watch this thing. But I'll tell you what, it is unbelievable to see the athleticism of what these guys can do.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I was looking at one big offensive lineman from Georgia, Pete, and the kid's a beast, 6'6", 330. He's projected to be a guard in the NFL, and you're just like, oh my God. And he ran a 4.97, and he has this great mullet that Rich Eisen and those guys couldn't get enough of the mullet. They were just commenting more on the mullet than the fact that the guy beat Tom Brady's 40 time by like 3/10. I mean, because I think Tom Brady was a 5'3", Pete. When
Yeah,
he ran,
it was
he looked
awful.
like a big Columbus when he's running, but obviously he trained and got a lot better. But when he was just kind of, loping along, it doesn't look the same. When these guys are running like this, they've been trained for speed.
Yep.
And that big guy, by the way, Pete, his rating was a 9.97 out of 10, like you said. And Cooper DeJean, the kid that had the interception on his birthday in the Super Bowl, well, that kid had to be pretty damn close to a 10 too, Pete. Because with his 40 times, with his agility and his on-field performance, not just in the gym performance, pretty amazing.
Well, and the number of guys this year who ran somewhere in the 4.2 range for the 40-yard dash, the number just gets bigger each year. These guys, the speed, John, is amazing. And DeJean was one of those guys. I mean, he was somewhere very, very high up as far as what his speed was at the combine as well, which just added to who he was at Iowa. And then obviously we saw him in the Super Bowl, and the tenacity that he had, and the fact that he got that interception, returns it for a touchdown on his birthday and everything else, pretty outstanding. The other thing I wanted to hit was this, John. It's funny because everybody is saying there's only really two quarterbacks this year in the draft. And they basically Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward from Miami. Now, Cam Ward has played, I think, at 3 different universities in 6 years. Shedeur has played at a couple different universities. Not a big deal. That part's not a big deal. But what I saw from those guys was impressive. They didn't compete at the combine. I mean, just on the field. What they did was extremely impressive. But, John, I'll tell you what, that kid, and I brought him up before to us last week when we were kind of looking at what to look for in the combine. Jackson Dart, he just lit it up again. That kid is going to be somewhere. And if he slips out of the first round, and Brady Cook, the kid from Missouri, is another one. Brady Cook at Missouri is unbelievable. His numbers were absolutely astounding. The problem for him is they ran the ball at Mizzou. They were one of those SEC teams that they were about 50-50 running and passing. So it didn't ever really get the opportunity for him to show himself as much. But at the combine, he also got a 10 at the combine. He ran a 4.6 40. He did this, he did that, all the things that you'd want in a really solid quarterback. But he didn't throw nearly as many passes as all of his competitors, in the SEC, even just to select those guys out. But I'm here to tell you, I think that there's more depth in the quarterback this year than a lot of people think. It's not just 2 guys. I think there's 5 or 6 that could be starters, not right away, not maybe even the first year, but could be starters in the NFL going forward, because there's a lot of talented guys out there, and the coaches at the college level just get better every single year to get these guys prepared to be in the NFL. So I think this is another year where, last year was a big quarterback year. I think this year's another really good quarterback year, but some of these guys will slip to the 2nd and 3rd rounds, and they're good. They are going to be starters on NFL teams.
Oh, yeah. And Cook is one of them, Pete. You're right. And in many cases, once the scouts know, because Pete knows NFL scouts, folks, Robinson being one of them, Pete, that, these guys are watching not just the combine, because, again, that's cool, but you're really, were you watching them when they played another SEC team with good, defenders in the case of Cook, since he's a quarterback and so forth? What were his decisions and so forth? And those scouts, after they notice a guy, they kind of shut up. They kind of, because they'd like to pick that guy up in the 2nd or 3rd round. I'm not saying he slips to that, Pete. You've already said Jackson Dart with an X, Jax. Jackson Dart, yeah, he's going to get the looks. But this guy, Tyler Scholl, Pete, at Louisville, also a beast. A beast. 4.64, so he's almost as fast as Cook. That's basically your lean at the end that determines 4.6 versus 4.64. I mean, that kid is fast as heck too, and put up some pretty good numbers. So there will be a couple of those guys, I agree with Pete, that will be playing soon. If not the first year out, they'll be playing soon in the NFL.
Yep, should be fun. I'll tell you what, It's amazing, John. 24/7, the NFL has ratings. And, when you look at some of the other sports, you almost feel bad. I mean, to some degree, not for the NBA because they're a bunch of guys sitting out, but outside of that, I wish hockey and some of those got a little bit more from the rating standpoint, just because great sports. And I love what happened with the NHL, during their week off this year when they didn't do that whole thing with all the superstars. They did it with the countries. That was a winner, and that will help them with their ratings the rest of the year.
Yep. Well, it is always an interesting month or so, Pete, before we get to what is it? It's in Lambeau this year, right? The draft.
Yeah, the draft.
The draft.
Lambeau.
That'll be interesting, to be in Lambeau Field for that. I can't wait.
Yep.
But there are so many good players that deserve a lot more accolades, and they'll get them, but they'll get them at the next level because, like you said, if Cook didn't get a chance, he still threw for 49 touchdowns, I think, Pete. So it's not like, oh yeah, they're a running team, Pete says. Yeah, they are, but he got a lot of touchdowns in there. I don't know if a lot of those were, once they got down to the 10 into the red zone and so forth, Pete, he just popped them to the tight end or whatever. But that's a lot of touchdowns in a career.
Those guys they're good players, man. We're lucky. We're in a good time in life, and these offensive coordinators are doing the right thing with these quarterbacks as well. All
right. Well, so that's going to do it for us, I guess, today, Pete. As usual, we appreciate all of you joining us. We hope that you check out RebelCon 2025 because RebelCon is going on March 22nd. Our friend Grant Cardone, friend and business partner Grant Cardone, will be kicking it off March 19th, 20th, 21st, and then we take over the 22nd. If you'd like to be there in Vegas at the MGM Grand, by all means, scan that QR code, join us. We'd love to have you. We're going to show you some tricks, but they're legitimate tricks that can make you a better trader. So think about it. We hope we see you there, and we'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m.
1 p.m.
Eastern Time.